Um, Great. Fantastic. We should be running. This is the first Tuesday class. All right. Welcome to the College Essay Writing Seminar. I sort of like to start by talking a little bit about who I am, so you know who you're dealing with. My name is Josh Harris. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Chicago, and I'm currently a master's student in filmmaking at Columbia University in New York. I was a English and theater major when I was back in Chicago, and I mostly do screenwriting now. I want to write movies for a living. But in addition to that work, I've also been helping incoming high school seniors with their college applications for about the last 5 to 8 years now. I really love the work. I think it can be a lot of fun. It's supposed to be a lot of fun. And that's part of why I continue to do it, because I know that a lot of students come into this process with a lot of anxieties about producing their college application materials. And I think that's with good reason. There's a lot of anxiety that's been built up around it. But the good news is this part of the process, it should, if dealt with properly, be a lot of fun. I know that was the case for me. I know for many of my students in the past, they actually quite enjoy it in a strange way. But there are parts that are easy and there are parts that are hard. The parts that I hope will be easy are you get to talk about the things you care about. You get to talk about your individual ideas, the things that you've been spending your last 17, 18 years of your life doing. It really should be a good time. We're going to endeavor for it to be a good time. The parts that will be hard are the parts that have to do with writing. And writing and revising can be really difficult. But that's why we're doing this all together. So with that being said, I think I'm going to turn over to the syllabus, unless any of you have any dying, burning questions that you want to ask before we get underway.
Well, do we have time after class to ask questions?
Yeah, I'm going to keep on giving us time to do this. I just sort of try and make the first class as open and free as possible because I know that a lot of folks come in with a lot of questions and anxieties, and I sort of want to redirect ourselves down a really stable path. Shall we go on with syllabus, and when we get to the end of that, if it's still burning, we'll talk about it?
Yeah.
Great. All right. So I believe a couple of days ago, I sent out a message to all of you with a link to the workshop stuff for the class materials, as well as individual emails for your personal folders. Is that correct? Did all of you receive those emails a couple days back?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the email.
Okay, great. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to open up my syllabus in the class materials folder, and then we're just going to walk our way through it. If you could go up onto that site too right now, just to make sure you actually do have access, we'll get going and we'll talk our way through the syllabus.
Wait, is this the Google Drive folder?
Yes, it is. When you last looked at it, there may not have been everything in there yet. I'm in the process of updating them I'm teaching classes like this about 4 or 5 times a week. So it's something of a juggling game of who has everything, and I'm just trying to make sure everyone always does. So yeah, if you can look up that Google Drive and make sure that you have access to what I'm currently showing on screen. There's the Tuesday class. Well, you will only see the Tuesday class stuff. There's class materials, an individual folder, and there should be emails that you got for both of them. For the individual folder, it will just be yours, obviously. And find a good place to save those links because you'll be going back to visit these pretty often. the class materials lands you here. There's the college essay writing workshop syllabus, as well as class materials of the college essays, sample essays by some of my past students, and works of literary nonfiction by professionals out in the field. Have all of you managed to get here? Have you all managed to get here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm here.
Great.
Yep.
One of the things about you all being blacked out on the screen, which is totally fine, is that I don't have a way to actually confirm that you've all said yes. So we're going to talk about it sometimes, but sometimes I just ask that you drop it into the chat box folder so I can actually confirm and move on. Sounds like that was all yeses, so we're good. Okay. So here we are. This is the college essay writing workshop storytelling seminar. You'll see at the top there's my personal email as well as the link to the class drive. If you download the syllabus to your desktop, then you'll also always have a link to the main drive folder, but not your individualized folders. Okay. In this class, we will study and practice the form of the essay. The essays we read and write here will be considerably different from essays you are used to writing or reading in school. At this early juncture, I want to scream rather loud so you hear me. Essay writing should be creative and fun. At its core, this is a class on storytelling. I really try to emphasize that at the beginning of this process and as we move on, as much as possible. I want this to be fun for you all because it's writing about the things you care about. In this class, you'll learn how to write compelling personal narratives and develop strategies for telling true stories from your own life. For a moment, forget about trying to satisfy what colleges want to hear, because the real best strategy to college essay writing is a very simple one. Figure out a story from your life that means something important to you and write it. And then you write another one and another. As it happens, these personal and specific stories are precisely what admissions counselors at colleges are looking for anyway. You give them what they want by showing them what they've never seen before, why you are awesome, and specifically you. I promise you can learn to do this, write compelling stories about who you are, where you come from, and why you are the way you are. I've seen it years and years, and every time it happens. We're going to have a good time with this. I'm determined that this process feel approachable and even fun, because it should be, okay? Okay. This is a workshop course, which means most of the text we'll be reading will come from you and your classmates. You'll submit works in progress, which we will help revise. We'll also read essays about essay writing that I have composed, college essays from some of my past students. Volume stuff going on. Are we okay? Okay. We will be reading college essays from some of my past students, some of my favorite, as well as some of my favorite pieces of nonfiction essay writing by professional writers. By the end of this course, so long as you keep up with your deadlines, you will complete a polished common application and draft work for your first few supplements. As I say, as long as you keep up with the coursework, because in order to complete all of this writing, there'll be a lot of work on your end that happens outside of class. You'll only be meeting here once a week on Tuesdays, and I'll have rather high expectations for the quality of work you complete in between sessions. In order to get skilled at college essay writing like any other skill, one needs to stretch the muscle. Since everyone works at a different pace, I won't make any quantified expectations of anticipated time, but please treat our class seriously, as if it were another school year class, another job, or extracurricular. There's a lot of work to do here, but the good news is, if it's all going right and well, it should be fun. So, are you with me so far? Does anyone have any questions about the overview? Okay, that's what I like to hear, Kevin. All right, then I will continue. Nuts and bolts of the class. This should give you some sense of what the trajectory of what we're working on here is. First, you'll complete the college essay questionnaire. We're going to look at that some together today, but we probably won't finish it in class. Please try to answer these questions as honestly and thoroughly as you can, because you'll likely come back to this sheet often for future materials, other essays. I'm also going to ask you to fill out what I call the school list. I both ask, and I should make sure that I've actually uploaded that because I'm not sure I've put that in the drive yet. It's where I ask what the schools you are anticipating applying to are, as well as what very specifically you are looking for in a school. I should say now at the outset, it makes no difference to me where you're applying. I'm going to treat you the same. I know that there can be a lot of anxiety tied to this process having to do with how hard schools happen to be to get into. And I know that you're probably thinking about all of that, but from my end, it's all about how do we get you where you want to be. So I trust that you've done all of that thinking and you know what sort of places you think you're applying to. Or if you're still looking for more, we can talk about it. But I want for you what you want for you. So if that happens to be an Ivy with really excellent neurobio labs that you can be at doing research during your freshman year, great. If it means that you're looking at agricultural schools that also have excellent orchestras, awesome. Again, I want for you what you want for you. So I'll ask you to fill that out. We'll do the college essay questionnaire and the school list separately, individualized, not among the class. Then you'll start work on your first draft of the common application essay. For this piece, you can adapt from your short answers to the questionnaire or write something else. Whatever you choose, write something that matters to you. Write something that you think will entertain your fellow students. When in doubt, write the story that you would tell even if it weren't an assignment. The first draft of the Common App should be about 500 to 800 words. That's about 2 or 3 pages double-spaced. It's okay if at the beginning it needs a lot of work or it's missing stuff. That's what an early draft looks like. Just do your best and get it in. I will say, though, please always submit your work for the class in 12-point font and double-spaced so it's consistent. And please always submit your work with your full name in the piece. I have a lot of students this summer, and part of the way that I'm going to keep track is by making sure that everything is well marked and organized. So the Common App you turn in autumn will need to be 650 words or less. My students inevitably find that that's a lot less space than they actually thought. When you've come up with a topic you care about and have developed enough material, you'll probably find, as many of my past students have, that you struggle to make it fit rather than to make it long enough. So for those of you who are worried about how do I get up to that word count, happens like that. We'll get there. First, you'll submit your first draft to class for workshop, and after workshop, you'll revise it and submit a second, and so on. And by revise, I don't mean mess around with a few words here and there. Sometimes the notes that you receive from both me and your classmates will suggest a total reworking of the piece, altering ideas, deleting or adding entire sections, changing word choice, writing is rewriting. Many of my students have gone through as many as 5 drafts of their common application, or really more. Ideally, as you get further along, it's just that the edits get smaller and smaller. at the beginning you're dealing with a concept level of, is that sort of story in place? Then you're working at the idea level, and then finally down to sentence level and word choice. And if you are funneling down effectively, it means that your work is getting better. The other thing I will say here, because I know that students often wonder about it, how do you write a school-specific supplement? We'll talk about this more later, but this is why I'm very serious about how I want you for the school list to talk about what the very specific things you want are. Without fail, the most effective school-specific supplements are when a student has figured out with pretty fine articulation what they really, really want. Because then they can look at a school, do their little bit of research about it, and actually be able to say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what you have, this is why I would be a really good fit here. It's one of the only places or the only place that I could get exactly what I want. And the same way that one is trying to show off why they should choose you for a given school, a school wants to know they're actually really the right place for you. And one of the only ways to show that that's true is to demonstrate that your specific list of wants is best fulfilled by this specific place. We'll come back to that later. But for now, I want that in the back of your heads. Next comes editing. You'll edit every one of your classmates' drafts. Each edit consists of two parts. There's a paper edit and a critique. On the paper edit, you just sort of look through the page and see if there are changes they should make on paper. Something you should know from me is that when I do edits, I typically do what I was describing before: concept level, idea level, sentence level, word choice. I usually am much more finicky about ideas, and then later I'll get finicky about sentences. So if you see a piece that you get back from me and it's totally red, covered with like responses to word choice and stuff like that, that actually means you're doing really well because you've gotten past the first couple levels of concern. So when you're putting together a critique for a classmate, it's actually a pretty straightforward thing. You look through their piece and you like have a piece of paper in front of you and you just sort of put together a scratch list. You can do it on paper or you can do it on like a Word doc or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. But you think about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what confuses you, and what should this author think about between this iteration of the text and the next in order to make it the most realized version of itself. I ask that you try and be as specific as possible. This comes down to me from one of my old writing teachers from college. One of his rules is that one has to be as specific with praise as one is with criticism. It's not enough to say, this piece is good, I like it, because it doesn't give the author an idea of where to go. The same way that I just don't like it doesn't help them either, but makes them feel bad. We want to know, what is the thing that is shining here? What is so effective? Is the word choice so specific and vibrant such that we get an idea of who this person really is? Then great. If they're engaging with ideas in a surprising way or giving you a new perspective, that's great. That's a reason why something is great. We want to get as specific as possible. That's what we're dealing with here. Your constructive criticism will likely echo some of your paper comments, but should also have idea level thoughts. Your edits for peer writing are as important as your own writing, I think, because great writers are great editors. They know how to tell and express why great writing is great and know how to solve problems in writing that need work. The best way to get better at revising your own work is to fix the problems of others and become good at it, and then recognize how to combat those problems in your own work. So that's why I structure this class this way. This is actually the way that most both collegiate and graduate level seminars in creative writing function. People will come in with work and there'll be a workshop where we all talk about it together. I've grown very fond of it. I think I always want to write in this way. it means you always have multiple perspectives giving you feedback, and you also have a room full of people who are holding you accountable to deadlines, which I also think can be really hard for college essay writing, because it feels like we're all doing this alone, which is insane because everyone in your life is going to be working on this, but somehow you get isolated. This is a way to not get isolated, to always have a group of people who we're doing this together. Another way to become a great writer of essay is to read great essays, which if your experience in high school is anything like mine was, you haven't. Actually, I'd be curious to ask, how many of you are familiar with reading or writing nonfiction? Do any of you commonly read The New Yorker or The Economist? Do you ever listen to true story podcasts? Things like NPR's This American Life.
Sometimes NPR, yeah. NPR in the morning, and that's about it.
Okay. Exactly. Dan and Richard, honestly, what all of you have said, that's sort of where I stood at your age as well. And I think it's sort of a boneheadedly straightforward kind of thing. Like, how can we expect high school seniors to write in this format having hardly ever experienced it, right? If, Richard, you sometimes listen to NPR, This American Life, stuff like that, that'll actually be pretty helpful to you, because what we do here is reasonably similar. It's just not podcasting.
Okay.
Though I think sometimes for this class, I assign a piece that was on This American Life many years ago. It's a David Sedaris story. Anyway, I think that it helps to be introduced to nonfiction because one gets a very different idea of what an essay can look like. It doesn't have to fit inside a box. Essay writing can be really creative. And again, I argue it really should be. And there's a piece that I'm going to ask you all to read about that, but that's for next class. So we will be reading some work by my past students, so you get an idea of what I think a really good Common App looks like. I've specifically chosen ones that seem a little far afield, that aren't necessarily about school activities, because I think it can help one explore unexpected pathways for things to write about. I'll have us all read some of my own materials. Excuse me, I'm just knocking into my tea over and over again. We'll read some of my own essay materials developed for this work, as well as essays by masters of the craft. These last literary essays will not look exactly like college essays because they're longer and written for a different purpose, but to my mind, serve as models for how personal essay writing can work, how it can be creative, and how it can be great. Also, just because of the way that this class often works, many of the literary essays I've selected are about immigrant experiences and racial identities, because I've found that my students often write about these experiences for college applications. And I think the examples I've given here do a nice job of thinking about immigrant and racial issues in ways that are specific and unique. So, yeah. To those who are wondering why we are mostly reading literary nonfiction as opposed to more college essays, I say to you, go ahead and find those books and read them on your own time, like the 100 Best Acceptance Essays. They may be helpful. I'm generally wary of them and worry that analyzing those pieces is liable to produce bad copycat writing. I think really the only one thing that all great college essays have in common is that only their author could have written them. They're that specific, they're that individualized, and that full of voice with respect to who that person is. So it can still be helpful. I think it sometimes just produces anxiety. I would sooner have you read the finest work by great nonfiction authors and talk about why their writing works and apply those lessons and keep our one step away from the flames. The most important thing in my mind will be that you develop your own system of what works for you and exit this class ready to tackle the rest of your college applications head on. So I hope that you will all leave this class with a completed, polished common application essay, as well as material first drafts of the first few supplements, to develop a skill set in nonfiction essay writing, and to feel equipped to complete the rest of the application process. A new appreciation for nonfiction as a literary form, and hopefully find a couple new favorite writers along the way. To develop a written work that you are proud of and new perspectives on writing, and to have a community of peers to approach for writing help, a network of people to exchange writing with through the rest of the college application process and beyond. I was really happy last year. There were a couple of students who kept in touch with each other throughout the fall and continued to workshop each other's work and keep each other accountable for getting the writing done. I think it's a really valuable thing to have, because as I was sort of saying about before, sometimes it feels like we're all like these racehorses with the blinders on, and there's something a lot better about getting the blinders off and realizing that all of you are going through this at the same time, and it's not easy to do alone. So, with all that being said, do any of you have any questions? Okay, I will assume, Dan and Richard, that we are still good to go.
Yeah, no questions.
Cool. Great. Attendance is really important. We only meet 10 times, and much of the work we do in class is workshop-based. I'll be giving lectures in many of our meetings, and these are easily saved to video and shared if you miss a class. But I try and orient my lectures to what I'm seeing in your writing. So both that and much of the editing that happens in class cannot be easily replicated at another date. We can try to have a makeup editing session at some point this summer, but generally speaking, please try to be here. That's all. It's the only way to ensure you get the most out of the class. Respect is essential. I know that this may be your first time in a workshop setting, and workshop settings can be complicated. When you critique an essay, please do so respectfully. Critique the writer, not the person, because it feels bad to be attacked. Personal writing is naturally incredibly personal. Some people in the class may end up writing about serious or difficult parts of their lives, and everyone should be writing about things that are important to them. The stakes are high, so we need to make sure we honor the effort this work takes and to be kind to our fellow students. On this note, I want to also say, perhaps some of you have essays that you're considering writing that you don't necessarily want to share in workshop. You can put those into your individual folders, and we can talk about them, just you and I. But I hope that you'll be able to turn in work even that's sensitive with the whole group, because having the help of the whole group is really valuable. And once that work gets to be really good, I'd hope that you'd feel proud of it and ready to share things, even if they are a little complicated or hard, with the whole group. So we can deal with that as that goes on. I will never ask you to share anything that you aren't comfortable with everyone. But you should think on that on your own if there happens to be something like that you'd like to write about, because the input of the whole class can be really useful. Plagiarism. It's totally unacceptable. You all know this. It's morally wrong, and it totally violates the spirit of what we're trying to do here. You're trying to tell your personal stories, so don't tell someone else's. You know this stuff. I just bring it up here because I need it to be on my syllabus. I need you all to specifically know this. The other thing that's been happening in the last couple of years is that sometimes students will turn in plagiarized essays, and when colleges figure this out, they reach out to other colleges, and those students don't get in anywhere. It's a really dumb reason not to get into school. So that's that. Don't do it. Don't plagiarize. On a similar note, accepting help from your parents and others is great, but be cognizant of the line and make sure that your work stays yours. Everything you submit should be yours and in your own words, because colleges want to hear your voice, not mine or your mom or your neighborhood florist's. So reach out, get as much help as you can, get as much input. But finally, the final calls to make are always going to be yours. Hit your deadlines and proofread. When you submit for this class, your peers will put a lot of work, as I will too, into reading, analyzing, and editing. Turn in work you're proud of, turn in work you've checked for spelling and grammar, and turn in your work on time. If the rest fails, please turn in your work on time. Drafts for class will be due to the workshop folders, which I'll show you where that is in just a second, 48 hours before class, so that both me and your fellow students have time to read and comment before class begins. 48 hours is a little bit of a lie. When I say 48 hours, I mean when we wake up Monday morning, it should be there in the folder. So it should be in by Sunday night, meaning whatever needs to happen in order that we can see it on Monday morning. That's your business. But we just want to have as much time the day before and then the day of to take a look so we can properly prepare. I also try and get out heavily marked up copies to each of my students for workshop, but I can only do that if I can see those pieces ahead of time, because it's just complicated and there's a lot of time that goes into it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the opening orientation. Now, does anyone have any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Okay. So I seem to have set this up for a class that has more people in it. We're going to have 2 workshop groups. It means that each of you, after the first couple weeks when we're all putting stuff up, we'll all go up for workshop every other week. Right now, there are 4 of you. From what I understand, there may be a 5th or 6th student who joins us for about the 3rd lesson and beyond. But for now, usually I teach this to 6. With 4, you all are going to have a whole lot more time. So here's what I'll say. There'll be specific workshop times for all of you, but if you happen to finish work and want us to look at it as a class during a class that isn't necessarily supposed to be your workshop time, in this class we'll probably have time for that because there's just those couple of open slots. For now, what I'd like to do though is I would like for us all to determine what workshop each of you are going to be in. So if you would look down at the calendar, do any of you know if one of these classes is a day that you are going to miss?
I might miss something in August. I'll check.
Okay, that's great, Dan. What do you think you might miss? Is that you, Kevin, who said that?
Yeah, that was me. Alright, I'm good actually. I won't have it in the night.
Okay, all right. So then we should just figure out when these workshops are. But again, because there are 4 of you, I think we might play it a little bit looser in this class because there will usually be extra time to do additional workshops beyond what we've scheduled. So if you are working on a supplementary piece, if you start working on school-specific supplements or additional essays, we should have time for them. We'll talk about that more as things go on. But for now, who would like to volunteer for group 1 and who would like to volunteer for group 2?
I'll do group 1 then.
Was that you, Kevin?
Actually, I'll do group 2.
What's the difference between the groups? It's just a difference in when you go up for workshop. What I like to do is I like to alternate which group goes up for workshop each week. That way you have 2 weeks between turning in your big drafts. It gives you more time to polish and make things stronger. Group 1 will go up with their first draft earlier on July 10th, their first full complete draft. Unless you happen to get further along faster than that. It doesn't make a huge difference, honestly. It's just which day is your dedicated day. Great. I will put Dan and Henry in group 1. And I'll put Kevin and Richard in group 2. Please make note of that on your own stuff, and then look at which days that means you should expect to go up for workshop. Excluding the first couple and last couple of sections, that means group 1, meaning Dan and Henry, you guys are the evens, you're 4 and 6. And group 2, Kevin and Richard, that means you're the odds. You're 5 and 7. Cool?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
Oh, cool.
All right. So I am going to right now ensure that I actually got the... Great. All right. Do any of you have any questions about this process now, where we stand?
No.
Okay. Then we're going to bounce over to the essay brainstorming sheet. I would recommend you either bring up a Word document on your computer or get a piece of scratch paper in front of you, or open up a copy of the document yourself. As I have it highlighted here, there's a PDF version and a Word version in folder 1 of college essay materials. It's right here. Ooh, and it looks like it is multiplying. I'm going to ask that ultimately you all save copies to your own folder. That way everything stays a little clean. But for now, I'm going to pull it up here. Okay. So I want to explain what's going on here a little bit. I hate the common application questions. I do because often enough I'll have really engaged, thoughtful students with great ideas. Then they'll get to that list of common application questions and they'll get blank page syndrome. I think we've all been there. I think that happens because the Common App questions are the perfect storm of being a little bit too real in terms of, am I really starting this? Oh God, it's the college process, 1. And 2, the questions are kind of boring. So I try and avoid them. I don't look at them directly because most of the time, well, first off, one of the questions is if you don't like any of these questions, you can create your own response and just write one. So it really doesn't matter if you're responding to them necessarily. But also, if you start from where your heart is at, where your thinking is at, you'll land with something that's really good that will end up answering one of those questions anyway without bothering yourself with all of that anxiety. So a couple years ago, I actually put together this list of questions because it is reasonably similar to what you'll see from schools, but I think the questions are a little bit more off-kilter and strange, which sometimes feels a little bit less buttoned up with a penguin suit than some of the other materials that you come across in the process. So I see this as a decent way to actually get to know each other and each other's interests. So in a moment, I'm going to turn the floor over and I'm just going to sort of ask these questions, and I want to hear your honest responses. And what I'd love for you to do is start making note. If you have a particular answer to one of these that you really love, get it down on paper. It could very well be the essay you write for your Common App. My intent is that by the end of the session, by a couple hours from now, you have a couple of leads. You have I have 2 or 3 things I could definitely write the Common App about. So that way, when you get started, you got something. You can hit the ground running as opposed to looking at that blank page in deafening horror. Okay. The other thing I'll say is I have answers for all of these too. It feels only fair that if I'm calling upon you to answer hard questions, that I'm ready to as well. Okay. So with all that being said, I'd love for someone to go up and speak up first. What do you do? Why do you do it? Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for going first.
Alright, so I actually have 3 things. The first one is history. I do the US NCO competition, and I put a lot of time and studied for it. And so I also help my the AP chemistry students at school. I tutor them after school. And then the second one is violin. Teaching students from the elementary and middle school violin for free during the summer. And then skiing, a local mountain, and I enjoy it. And I can also teach small kids so that they also get the enjoyment they grow up.
Nice. Why do you do those things?
Because they're all very enjoyable, and I can share my passion for them to other people.
What do you like about teaching violin to small kids?
So the problem with the group lessons at school is that the teacher can't focus on every student individually, and so they tend to have that really their potential. And so when I do the free private lessons, I can focus on their posture and their individual techniques that they can use.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. Are you mostly a chemistry student? Is that where your focus goes first?
Chemistry and violin are the. I do have some good ideas for the skiing if I chose that as the subject.
Okay. Cool. That's a really great place to start. Who else? Who's next?
I can go.
Shoot, what you got, Henry?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. All right. Yeah, so I definitely like music. Um, so I do like several music groups. I do marching band. I do regular school band. I'm in a so is about music, playing music for the public, and I do these things because first of all, music's fun, and uh, marching band is fun because it's like being in a community and something about like uh, working hard towards a product and performing arts. I think that's also really fun and focusing really hard on each individual component to make a product, which is basically what you do in rehearsals, and the stellar product is your performance. And I think that it pays off really well. And
What instrument do you play in the marching band? I played the piano in the marching band.
and I used to play saxophone, but now I'm the drum major, which means I conduct. So I don't play anything right now.
Hmm.
In regular band, I play bassoon.
How did you get to be the drum major? From all I know, that's always like a complicated and circuitous path, right?
Right. Well,
To become the drum major, right?
sorry, what was that?
Everyone's looking out to try and become the drum major, right?
I mean, I guess. Well, in bigger schools, there's like multiple drum majors, the entire audition process. But my school only has one drum major because we're a pretty small band, so there's really no audition. It's just like whenever the current drum major is about to graduate, my band director just gets all of the current seniors to just nom one, and then if he's in it.
That's kind of cool.
So, yeah.
So you were selected by the outgoing seniors to be the next drum major.
Yeah.
That's cool. So is it always a rising senior?
No, actually, because I was picked. I was a drum major last year when I was a junior, so not all the time.
Okay. Well, that's really cool. That could be a lot of fun to write about. That's a
Yeah.
that's a fertile ground. Okay, Richard, Dan, who's next?
I guess I can go.
Sure.
Okay, so also do some chemistry, but also science in general. So I did chemistry Olympiad as well this year. And I also did biology Olympiad, and I'm on like the science bowl team, where I think fun. I also do this academic competition called Quiz Bowl, which is it's like a team sort of buzzer-based competition where four can against one another to answer questions about just really all kind of academic subjects, and that's been a really big part. That is because last year we had this one kid at our school who was a senior, and he was really good at bowl. And after nationals, he was like, "Yeah, I'd really love to see our school become like a nationally recognized team." And so I was like, "Dude, I'll totally do that." So I've been a lot on bowl. And also, I like to swim in my free time, but I haven't had as much time to do that this year because of just being younger.
Are you telling me the junior year is busy?
Yes.
Yeah. I have younger sisters and younger cousins as well. And every couple years, I'm reminded what a nightmare junior year of high school is. Congratulations to all of you for being done with it. I promise senior year in most ways won't be as horrible. because I know junior year is crazy. So that's great. What kind of swimming do you like to do? Do you have a stroke that's your go-to?
Oh yeah, so definitely breaststroke is my best stroke. And I think it's a little more technical than something like freestyle, and that plays into my strengths.
I've always been an awful swimmer, so like I just do backstroke. That way I can always breathe. I'm fine at like breaststroke and front crawl, but like after about a minute or two of swimming, I just like, I don't have the timing down. So I admire anyone who like sort of has that all worked out. Yeah. Okay. Those are both quite interesting things. What is your role on the Quiz Bowl team, or what do you see as your particular skill within the Olympiad competitions?
So definitely like, I'm a science sort of kid, so on Quiz Bowl, usually I just get the science questions, but I like to read a lot of stuff. I get some of like the literature questions as well. Just in general, like Quiz Bowl has really, it's really like helps me learn to like learning as much, a lot more than I did before. And it's really exposed me to like a lot of things. I got exposed to Quizboard. I saw myself as sort of like, I'm a science kid, like, I'm not very good at these humanities, but like through Quiz Bowl, I've learned a lot of interest. It's definitely like shown me a lot of things that I wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to.
Cool. That too could be a lot of fun to write about. That's great. A great start. Richard, let's hear it. What you got?
There's that I guess I'd about, which is soccer, because I've done it for a really long time. I think it's been like 10 years since I started. So I stopped doing club this year, because junior year, but I studied the school team and everything. So go to practices after school. You do a lot of running and stuff, which I don't like. You gotta kind of forget about like school and all that work, and you could just have
What position do you
with
play?
some friends. Mostly either right back or left back, so one of the wing backs on defense.
I always don't know the word for this. I used to call it ambidextrous. Are you left-footed, right-footed, or can you kick with both feet equally?
Definitely right-footed, but my left foot is okay, I guess.
So you're
right, not as well as the right foot.
approaching ambidextrous.
Maybe. Like Messi, like stuff about he just controls the ball with his left foot and dribbles past everybody. Yeah. So I'm gonna say, but a lot of players we have, but
Have you gotten good at faking injuries? I know that's one of the most important soccer skills.
Oh, diving.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, well, it depends on who you play, I guess. In some leagues, some players are more dirty than others. So lots of players will try like elbow, like isn't looking, and then when you try to like get back at them, they'll just like fake an injury. Yeah, but I don't think I dive much because I think it's something that's cheap, I guess.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question of you, but it's a question that I want all four of you to think about. Having played soccer for 10 years, you're an expert. What are things about soccer that I, as a person who stopped when I was 12, wouldn't realize? What is your expert perspective on what it means to play soccer at this level of excellence?
I guess one thing is every player has to have like a similar skill set. Like even if you're on defense, you have to be able to take shots, control the play, have a good feel. Because you're back there doesn't mean that like all you do is try to take the ball from somebody else. I guess kind of obvious, but that's one thing.
So soccer is a sport where, say, unlike baseball, you have to be really well-rounded in all of these skills.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Make note of that on your page or your version of that, because that sounds like it could be a metaphor for something.
Okay.
And to the rest of you, is there anything that occurs to you in light of that question with respect to your own skills, whether it's swimming or tutoring or academic quiz bowl challenges or music stuff? Is there something that through your many years of doing it, you have an expert perspective on that someone who doesn't have your experience wouldn't realize about your given interest?
Could you like restate the question specifically what you might be looking for?
Yeah. The dicey thing is there isn't one thing in particular I'm looking for. What I am looking for is expert knowledge. I'm looking for a perspective that only you have because you've been doing the things that you've been doing for so long. So for example, if I were doing this, I might talk about the experience of being a theatrical sound designer for 5 years, because that's what I was doing in college. And I might talk about the ways in which there's this complicated act when you're trying to lay down underscoring beneath a play or a movie, where you're both trying to give off this piece of ambiance without making it really obvious that it's there. There's this principle in sound design that if you're not familiar with sound design, you wouldn't realize that what you are trying to do is give an audience a feeling that they don't realize they're having. If the audience doesn't notice the sound, you're doing your job right. Now, with that as an example, is there something about your experience in the chemistry competitions or chemistry tutoring, your experience playing violin and teaching violin, or all of the time you've spent skiing, have you acquired some piece of expert knowledge that someone unfamiliar wouldn't realize and would be interested to hear about?
I'll have to think about this one.
Yeah.
Perhaps a sec.
Does someone have an answer to that they would like to share, or is that just something that you'd like to ruminate on? Okay, then we'll just keep going. That's cool. These are great opening answers. Let's keep going. This is really what I want to do with the rest of class today. Just sort of go through these questions, hear your answers so that we get to know each other, and have you have this opportunity to really brainstorm what possible essay topics could be. What's your obsession and why is it important?
I'll go for this. So the it is enjoyable. The second is I can teach others and share my passion with, and the third I can do it. And so I think I might be able to write an essay about this.
Sorry, you were cutting in and out a little bit, such that I heard you were saying that it's your passion and it's something that you really love working on, but I didn't hear what the actual thing is. What is your obsession?
Skiing.
Oh, skiing, yeah.
So number one is enjoyable. Two, I can share passion with others, and three, I can apply physics to it.
How do you think about the physics of skiing?
Well, so you would just, from the physics classes I take, I some simple knowledge of skiing and potentially help me improve my skiing or explain the techniques that.
Do you mean like ski jumping, or do you mean like normal, like cross country?
Alpine,
Alpine.
just down. Yeah.
Downhill, alpine.
Alpine.
What's a way in which having a greater understanding of physics has helped? Is it like stuff about potential energy and inertia?
So means the carving turns, and so the carving turns, it's the normal force from the snow acting upon your skis up inward. And so if you wanted to increase that force to turn more quickly, you would have to tilt your skis a little more so that more is actually and not acting upwards.
This is a really interesting and fertile ground. You could come up with a very interesting piece of storytelling about this. I'd love to hear what might come out of this. This is quite interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, great. Does someone have an answer for this that they would like to share? What's your obsession and why is it important? I would like to share one of mine, if only to prove a point. I think that sometimes your answers to these questions can actually be seemingly banal or weird or out there. If you were to ask me what my obsession is, I would say the 1960s girl group pop groups produced by Phil Spector. So the Ronettes and the Crystals and Bobby Sox and Darlene Love. I'm obsessed with that old 60s girl group sound. And part of the reason why it's so important is it's perhaps some of the finest produced music ever made. It's got this amazing wall of sound production where layers on top of layers are stacked, but you can still hear everything really clearly. And to this day, when people are learning music production, they often go back and look at those Phil Spector arrangements because there's some of the finest examples of clarity and complexity at the same time in the making of music. My interest in Phil Spector girl groups wouldn't on its face seem like an academic interest, but in unpacking it and thinking about it, it actually really is. Because most of my academic life at this point, as a person who is interested in English and literature and movie making, is about how one can, in storytelling, have complexity and clarity at the same time. With that being said, does one of you have an obsession? And it can be out there. It can be Pokemon. What's your obsession and why is it important?
I really have one. I'm a really big fan of The Simpsons. I don't really know what I'd write about that, but just like I started watching it in fourth, and since then I've watched at least 2 or 3 episodes every day. Um, yeah, now that I think about it, it's kind of weird, but like it's not even a very good show anymore. But I just would have it.
What do you love about The Simpsons? Why is it important?
Uh, I don't know. I guess like the fact that it reflects um just a very like typical like American life. I guess. Like Emily and The Simpsons made to be like something very normal. Like they're like a sort of upper middle class family, and the stuff they deal with. Okay, there's a big difference between like the older episodes and the newer ones, but the older ones, which I like to watch a lot more, they deal with like a thing that I think there is an episode where like Homer thinks he's gonna die because he ate like puffer, and it was really touching because he thinks he only has a day to live, and he goes out and he like has to make peace with Billy and everyone. I don't know, I just it's a really touching series at times, but it can also make you laugh, obviously. Yeah, just really like it.
That's a really good answer. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's unlikely for a Common App to be able to talk about Simpsons, but I think it's incredibly likely for a supplement that there'll be a time to, actually.
Okay.
I really think so. You'll come across some time where they'll ask, like, what literature do you read? What movies do you watch? What books do you read? And that would be a reasonable time to go on a tirade about why The Simpsons is the most important show ever.
All right.
And if you can build up the case for it, that'd be really interesting to read. I have a couple of thoughts on this, though I am not as avid a Simpsons watcher, clearly, as you are. There is so much Simpsons, like it's been running for like 30 years or something now, right?
Yeah.
From what I understand from really rabid fans, is that there's a Simpsons episode about just about everything. It has managed to make comedy about just about every possible social issue, political issue, personal issue. There's Simpsons about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if one wanted to like learn about human life and what it means to be in America, all that, you could look at an encyclopedia. But if you wanted to have a good time, you'd sit down and watch The Simpsons.
Yeah, and like part of the reason why like sometimes we'll ask you like you've seen this episode so many times, like why do you watch it again? And it's because like each time I watch it, like there's a reference there or like a joke that I didn't before, and I totally get it now, or I like see this reference that I didn't see the first time. And just like there's a lot of meaning, especially in the older episodes, that's put in there. I can sort of like see something I didn't see before.
It makes me realize I should probably watch the show. I also realized that The Simpsons has inspired most of modern animated television. It completely changed the landscape of what people thought was possible to do with animation. Anyway, we could totally get sidetracked here. And were we not in our first class, I might even indulge it because it could be quite useful to your writing. But for now, we won't. I just want you to look up a play. It's called the Mr. Burns Post-Electric Play. I think you will adore it. I'm not remembering the name of the author at the moment, but the play is about a post-apocalyptic world where the only art that has survived from the old world is The Simpsons. And they're theater troupes that go around that have episodes of The Simpsons memorized that they perform in this post-apocalyptic universe. And The Simpsons is what they fall back on as their history, the same way that we might fall back on, I don't know, the Bible and Shakespeare.
All right, I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
It's wild. It's a crazy thing. Okay. That's a really great example. That's a really great obsession. Any others that people would like to share, or shall we move on to the next question?
Like, have anything that good to say, so I'm fine with moving on to the next question.
Okay. Then let's move on. What was the thing that only you noticed? What was the thing that only you did?
So I'll go. So mine is, what was the only thing that you did? I took the Rangers of America Level 1 Alpine test and got my certification for that. I could write maybe an anecdote about that experience or put it in the beginning of the ski essay.
That's a really good answer. Yeah. Why were you the only one to do it?
Well, first of all, not many people from high school teach skiing. And fewer people go the next step to get their certification, which is just a 2-day exam where you test your skills and knowledge of ski terminology and others.
So it's really the ability to say, I'm the real deal. I've done the studying to for skiing.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
and the practice.
That's awesome. Yeah, that would be a really valuable way, a really valuable thing to make its way into a skiing essay. I would love to see that. Any other answers for this? What was the thing that only you noticed, or that only you did?
Okay, I can go. Okay, so last year in my junior year, or this is tying back to marching band again, where we our band kind of started off, had like a lot of like behavior issues, and it was hard for like the seniors to like keep their section under control, and like got yelled at a lot by instructors, and like as a result, you know, we lost our first competition. Like we have 5 competitions, and then we lost our first one. And these freshmen are like brats. They're like so arrogant, and like there are a lot of juniors who are also arrogant and like rebellious. They won't follow rules, and a lot of seniors are like getting fed up, and they're like not having it, so they just like give up sections, whatever. I can't like amount of like yelling or whatever discipline is gonna work. But like this was just we had enough talent in our band. It was just like behavior issues. And what I noticed was that out of the freshmen you don't know exactly everything about marching band. Like it takes several years to get experience and like know ins and outs. Ever since going in was like getting told do this, do that, and none of them were ever or explain why we're doing this or why you have to do this. Like why you have to follow the rules that your seniors tell you, or like, why you have to point your feet when you do these choreograph, or like why do you need to point your horn like to the box when you're playing, or you need a good technique, why do you need that technique, and why do you have to stay 100% throughout rehearsal? Like they're told to do that like constantly and they never follow it, but they've never told them why. And like obviously the reason to this is, or like the answer to why is like because all of this will reflect in the performance, and ultimately that's how we win. They're not told that. So like after we lost the first competition, I basically held like, then I just played off. And then there's also like some drama and stuff. So like I let people like say like what they wanted to say, and then so like, well I was a junior, so I like to the seniors I kind of like asked them to compare themselves to previous years, seeing like how they're like shaping up or how they compare. Like, are you like what remember like the stuff they used to do, or how to inspire sections. What are you not doing that's like not working? Blah blah, stuff like that. And the next 4 competitions, and it wasn't like a change of like talent, or it wasn't like hard work or practice. It was just like explain to the freshmen like why we do stuff, instead of like just constantly telling them how to do stuff and then yelling at them when they do it. So it was a big improvement, and it was a quick improvement too. And it was kind of an easy fix, but like no one really like did it.
I want you to make very good note of this, because
Yeah. I mean, like I already have, like I already thought about it, so like
cool.
that's why I can talk so much about it.
Often enough, you'll see prompts that are about what is the most important quality in a leader. What is a time that you were a leader, and what were your strategies? Blah blah blah. This seems like a really original answer, and one that I don't often hear. It's not enough to say what the people who are following you are supposed to do. If you want them to do it well, you also have to tell them why. And it's easy to overlook, but if you want people to fall into line and do the right thing, they need to know why. They need to
the reasons.
Be able to think for themselves. Yeah. That's
until my sophomore year, and then I was like, oh, now I get it. This is why we're doing all this stuff. But then by then, like some years already graduated, like there you're great. So like, and it's just like the cycle just keeps going. So that was like not a good.
There's a phrase you may not have heard before, but maybe a good one for you to know. Are you familiar with the phrase institutional memory?
No.
So it's exactly what it sounds like. Places like high schools and colleges can have a lot of problems with institutional memory. The idea is a given institution, its memory will only be as good as the people who have been around there the longest. And so it's the way that traditions can be passed on without knowing why you do them. It's the reason why there can be a situation of, but this is how things are done, and there isn't ever a conversation about why. And the memory of a group graduates out because the people with the most experience have only been there for 4 years and will be out in 4 years. It was a thing that I noticed a lot in my a cappella group, something similar to what you describe, where there'd be things that we just did and we'd never explain why we did them because we had always done them, but the younger people in the group wouldn't understand why. And sometimes it takes the act of stepping back, like you described, so that the institutional memory carries on, so that the young people also know why things are done. Okay. That's really great. If no one else has any ones that they want to share for this, I want to move on to the next question. Is that all right?
Going back to the institutional
Institutional memory, yeah.
Yeah, for violin and skiing, there's a lot of things that could fall in that category. How would we use that? Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure. I think it's just a good idea to be familiar with. At a given place, it's really good to have institutional memory because there's a history of how things are done, but also people can grow set in their ways. The people with the most institutional memory will do things the way they've always been done.
I see.
And there are certain things in skiing that, like, if you hire a new instructor, they don't know how to teach the way that this specific ski program teaches skiing. And there may need to be, no matter how competent a ski instructor they are, there may need to be a pretty significant learning period for them to learn how to teach skiing the way that you guys do, right?
Mm-hmm.
They lack the institutional memory of your institution, no matter how qualified and able they are to teach. Yeah, so let's get moving forward. What's something that you often say or that you ardently believe that people are totally surprised by? Any rebellious streaks? No. Does anyone have an answer for this? Again, it doesn't have to be profound and academic. It can be, no, I'm a good boy. All right, well then we'll move on up then. What's an object you own? Ideally, a like household or mundane object that carries great significance to you.
I'll go. So long ago, I mixed baking soda with vinegar, along with some other chemicals in an empty gas bottle, and then the reaction happened, obviously, and then I put the cap back on and kept my room, and it's still. So I guess it could represent the beginnings of my chemistry exploration.
Yeah. That's really great. Where do you keep it in your room?
It's just on the shelf.
Did you do this with friends? Did you do this with family? Did you do this in secret?
No, I was just by myself. Yeah, I was just by myself. I did it on the driveway. I just put some.
What did your parents think about this when they found out?
Nothing.
Why do you still keep it in your room?
I don't know. It's just, I guess it's just the beginnings of me as exploring chemistry, and so now that I explain what actually happened with the knowledge I have now.
Do you have a streak of doing these sort of pop-up chemistry experiments at home?
Yeah, the rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, I sometimes burn it with other stuff.
Where do you do this?
On the driveway with the hose nearby, so it's all safe.
So I can only speak from my own perspective, but I imagine other members of the class can weigh in. That's kind of crazy and not a thing you hear all the time, right? Yeah, future arsonist. Lol.
Yo, I had a hose near.
Yeah, I have a hose nearby.
Surrounded by bricks.
So one of the things I find myself often talking to students about in these classes is there's certain interests that come up reasonably often as things to write about for college essay. One of them is talking about interest in science. So the trick is always figuring out what is your entry point that they haven't heard before. And this sounds like an example of one. I do strange chemistry experiments in my driveway, always with a hose nearby in case they go wrong. That's a really interesting entry point into talking about your interest in chemistry. And honestly, not one I've heard before. Yeah, that is very you. Any other objects that people would care to share?
So it's like one object, but sort of like every time I go to, science or whatever competition, like you get or whatever, and, I always try to like take back like a cup or a bottle from lunch because I don't always like do super well at competitions, but I don't know, I just like have something that I can remember it by. So I have just this box of like cups and bottles that I bring back from these competitions.
So you collect stolen participation trophies.
Yeah, I guess.
That's really charming. That's really great. I like that a lot. That could also be a fun thing to write about. I'm going back and forth about whether I actually share this on the group call. I guess I will. I actually stocked most of my apartment's cups in college with stolen cups from the dining hall that was about to close. Because me and my roommates had been going to that dining hall for like 2 years or something, and we had all of these like really warm feelings about the Pierce dining hall, and it was about to be kaput, and we were like, crap, we need to stock up so that we have a little piece of Pierce with us before they knock it down. And like when they did, I mean, Pierce, it was a crazy thing. They had to close down that dorm, the one that had the dining hall in it, because of exploding toilets. A thing for another time. But I like that. I like the idea of before a place shuts down, you take a cup so that you'll be able to remember it, even if you're not necessarily supposed to. Whatever. Any other objects people would care to show, or shall we move on to the next thing? We can move on to the next thing. What can't you do? When did you fail? What are you bad at? And how has that made you great? Well said, Dad. I don't believe you, but that's okay.
So I'm not sure if this is a good topic, but it seems kind of mundane. But struggle at lower vibrato for violin, and I just struggled and couldn't get it. I thought my drum were stiffer than average, but one day I just got it.
What helped you get better? What got you to the point that you were actually able to do it?
I just kept trying to do lighter. I tried many different things like stretching out my fingers and trying to look up some information on.
Sorry, it seems it disconnected me for a moment. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It seems it disconnected me for a moment. And we're back. My apologies. You were saying before I rudely interrupted you by disappearing.
What did you hear up to?
You were basically saying that you got good at stretching fingers. There were all of these strategies that you undertook in order to get better at violin.
Oh yeah, none worked, but I just had to take a step back and just not worry about it and just think light, relaxed, and then one day I just got it.
That could be a valuable thing to write about. I actually don't think that's boring at all. I think that that's a experience that many of us have, having to sort of like figure out how to work the muscle in order to get better at something that we struggle with. It's a good answer. I would love to hear from Henry, because I would love to hear from Henry, and I would love to hear from Richard. Richard, is there something that you are bad at? Or Henry, it sounds like you were about to get started.
Oh yeah, okay, so I just thought of this, but I guess something I'm bad at would be like math competitions. In like 8th grade and 9th grade, I was trying to like do those, like the AMC and AMY, and also USICO for programming, and I wasn't like naturally talented. I studied pretty hard, but like obviously I wasn't like near as good as like my peers who are all like pretty small. I mean, not small, pretty pretty smart. So basically, like I just stopped pursuing like those competitions because I just couldn't do them. I wasn't like good at them. But I guess how that made me great was, I could like search for stuff that I actually enjoy, like doing like pursuing stuff in music instead. But I mean, like I'm still planning to major in STEM, in college. But like I just like in high school I just stopped pursuing those competitions and I spent my time doing stuff I actually enjoyed instead of just like studying for stuff I didn't like.
Yeah. I think that's a really valuable experience to go through, of realizing that there's something that you do and spend a lot of time on that just like doesn't work for you, and your time is valuable and should be dedicated to where it should go. Yeah, I I identify with that quite a bit. Richard, what are you bad at?
Um, I don't know how this has made me great, but I can't sing at all, I guess. Can't sing
Oh,
for the life of me. I
you
don't know.
can't sing.
No. I mean, there's one thing, I don't know, this is a really small thing, but on a random topic, I spent like a few months in class trying to learn how to spin a pencil around my thumb. And I guess after, a few months, I was able to spin a pencil around my thumb. So I don't know what that's supposed to do, but that's something that I did and succeeded at.
Okay. That was something that only you. I mean, I know it's pretty tough to spin a pencil, isn't it? I've seen folks who can do it. Oh yeah, they're right. You should prove it.
Wait, don't have a camera. Here, I'll just. Okay, ready? Don't have a camera, but just believe me and it'll happen. Ready, set. Okay, I did it. Applause.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Kevin, fake news. Richard, before this class is up, I'm going to ask that you submit a YouTube video link to the whole watch you spinning a pencil. Kick him out, lol. No, Richard, you are welcome. But before the summer is out, I'm going to enlist you to find a friend to iPhone video you doing the spinning the pen. But we don't need to worry about that now.
Look forward to
I want to go back to what you were saying a moment ago. You can't sing not for the life of you. Do you do a lot of other musical stuff?
I did band in junior high. I played saxophone like Henry, alto, but I played piano for a while, and that's about it.
When does it come up that you can't sing? Are you ever like in the car with friends and you're sort of like jamming out?
Yeah.
They'll tell you, okay, you could.
Yeah, everybody sings, and then I just like kind of bob my head along, pretend. And then everybody else is like, just screaming and shouting, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing that too. Yeah.
What do
no, it's nothing.
What do you and your friends listen to in the car?
I guess it's mostly either pop music or rap, I guess. So, and I don't know the songs half the time either, so that doesn't help.
Well, everyone loves the guy who tries to sing along with a song he doesn't know. Right? Haven't you done that before, where you like sort of half pretend you know the song and like,
yeah, nothing happens.
Yeah. If you mumble hard enough, like you can almost pass off as if you know it.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
The fact. Extentation? What?
Oh yeah. He got shot. In peace.
I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah. You look it up or something.
All right, I'll look this up later, but let's keep focused on where we're at. Okay. I'm gonna skip over these next few. I would love to know if you, as I often do, find yourself at 2 a.m. reading Wikipedia articles or Tumblr posts or Facebook garbage. What are these articles about, or what site are you looking at, and why are these things so important to you that you'll read about them well into the night at the expense of your beauty sleep?
That's like the YouTube binge in the middle of the night. I don't know. That happens to me like every night. Yeah, just on your phone, YouTube random videos and then related videos. It's like all of these random things that you somehow feel like are interesting, even though you gotta sleep. And then you wake up the next morning and you're tired, and then it happens again. Even though you're like, that'll never happen again.
I have a whole principle about this. I call it night Josh and morning Josh. Night Josh likes to stay up really late. Night Josh is a whole lot of fun and wants to watch movies until 3, 4 a.m. And morning Josh knows that that's a horrible idea, but morning Josh isn't nearly as much fun as night Josh. So night Josh gets to make most of the decisions. What are the things you find yourself watching on YouTube? Where do your obsessions lie?
A lot of it's just random, like making things, either cooking things or building things. And then you just kind of watch everything happen. And then you just want to watch more or look at more like cool things, cool tricks. So I'd say I watch a lot of.
I ask this very specifically because this can be a really good way of breaking into some interest of yours. It's a more unusual way to start talking about one of these things. But if you have some sort of interest in physics or building, it can sometimes help to start by talking about the very personal and silly version of the interest that leads you into the more academic version. What I'll say is I have a pretty academic interest in screenwriting and movies and all that, but like it's not very academic when it's 3 a.m. and I'm reading trivia about my favorite movies on IMDb, which I do a lot of the time. But it's a way of getting at personality that's a little more personal and a little less academic, which is a nice place to start. Do any of the rest of you have a specific 2 a.m. binge activity of the internet variety or otherwise?
Okay, so sometimes like I watch a lot of anime, so sometimes I'll stay up really late watching anime if it's like a particularly good series and I'm just getting into it. Yeah.
What are your favorite anime?
Okay, so I like to watch a lot of so I like to watch what's called like shonen anime, which which is anime it's like shonen literally means just like boy in Japanese. So like it's like anime that's like actiony. So if you think of something like Dragon Ball Z, like that's like a shonen anime. My favorite anime is something called Hunter x Hunter, and it's about a boy who goes on a journey to find his dad. And it was like really life changing for me actually, because it was really cool and like a lot of people think anime is just for kids, but it can really explore a lot of like really deep themes, I think.
Write it down. That sounds a lot like an unusual essay. I am not as versed in anime as I should be. A bunch of my college buddies were huge anime buffs. I mean, they were weebs because they were mostly white folks. But almost all the time, in the background, there'd be, I'm trying to remember what the name of the one, maybe it was called Death Note, but the one where there'd be like the notes that would go to the cell phones. They also watched, what else did they watch all the time? The only one, Future Diary, that's the one!
Oh, yeah. Mirai Nikki, that's a great one.
Yeah, Death Note memes. The one that they got me to watch, which I adored, and I see what you're talking about, the ways in which anime can actually have this quality of being more serious, thoughtful work that isn't just for kids. I watched Madoka, the Magical Girl show, and it's so so good. Who knew that a Magical Girl show could end up being about like Faustian bargains?
Yeah.
Anyway, all of which is a roundabout way of saying, linger on that, think about that. There's a good anime piece to be written. Absolutely, 100%.
All right.
Thank you. What else? Any other 2 a.m. obsessions that we should speak of, or shall we move on to the next thing? Okay, we'll move on to the next thing. Oh, I am really curious with this group what your answer for this is. Who is your favorite historical figure who I have almost certainly never heard of? And I'll open that up too. If it's a favorite historical event, that's also fair game.
I have something pretty random because I did a project for world history on Attila the Hun. So he had there's also Bleda the Hun, Bleda, Bleda the Hun. And then Bleda is basically his brother, and there are a lot of theories going around that Attila killed him to ascend to the throne, basically. So I'm not sure he's my favorite, like, random bat for him because Attila the Hun's, like, relatively well known, I guess. It's like, you know, the Huns just rode around everywhere, killing, conquering, and stuff. And the leader of that great empire was Attila, but Bleda, who was, like, also the leader, was just, like, killed randomly. But it was a sad ending to him, I guess.
Was he a more sort of dignified and straightforward leader? Do we know?
I don't know that much about him in general. Yeah, so I don't really know. I guess his ideas just clashed with his brother, so then he got killed.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. I definitely don't know Attila's brother. And Rip is correct. Thank you, Dan Nee. Any other answers for this? Historical figures who are excellent, who I probably have never heard of. My favorite is probably Lorenzo da Ponte. I won't talk about him in great detail. If you're interested in reading about him, I have my answers to the essay brainstorming sheet inside of the class materials. But the long story short is Lorenzo da Ponte was Mozart's librettist, and so he wrote the lyrics to a few of the most important of Mozart's operas. And he lived a crazy life that was sort of like a rags to riches to rags story. Because like at the height of his powers, he sort of like gets exiled and sent away again, and he lands back in New York with nothing, and then starts up the opera craze in the United States. His is a pretty crazy story that most people don't know. I should also say about this question, often enough, there will be questions from colleges about if you could have, if you could go out for coffee or have dinner with a favorite historical figure, who would you choose? The reason why I ask this question is because more interesting than answering Abraham Lincoln is answering Letta the Hun, so long as you can defend the choice. That's a decent answer too. Holy hell. Anyway, any other answers on this front, or shall we move on to the next question? Lorenzo, yeah. Here. Here it is, Lorenzo De Ponte. All right, now we're gonna jump back to work. Oh, what ideas and issues do you and your friends argue about? This is also a way of getting at conflict, getting at your perspective. What do you guys argue about? Me and my friends, we argue about what movies shouldn't have won the Oscar. Oh, Dan, I'm sure you don't mean that. That's very funny. What do you and your cohort, what do you guys argue about? What ideas and issues do you argue about?
Well, some of my friends say everything should be paid, like even volunteer work should be paid, but then it wouldn't be volunteer. And then I think that a lot of things that you should do should be just out of generosity and for free. Some of the ways that I argue for that is through economic terms. You see, for example, at violin lessons, some people have a lower willingness to pay. And so if you set your price high, the equilibrium quantity is going to be decently low, probably below the socially optimal level. And so you should make your price lower or $0 so that more people will be able to do it. And then other ways, just because it's morally correct and you're helping that to the community.
That's a really interesting answer, and I could see how you could probably get into conflict about that. That's an interesting thing to think about. Principles of where things should be priced for the common good. I think we think about that in some respects in this world all the time. There are plenty of people that talk about you price what the market will bear, but the market will bear isn't always kind to the whole populace. And there's sometimes good reason to offer services for free in order that everyone can afford them and be able to have them. Yeah. Anyone else? Other people's hair. Richard, I want to hear the full answer on that.
I mean, if someone needs a haircut, you fresh cut them or whatever, slap them across the face. I always have a couple friends that like to get on each other for like the randomest things. They just flame each other over like stupid details. So yeah, like hair, like I don't know what shirt they wore. It's just random stuff. It's pretty funny.
That's pretty funny. Any other examples? Things you argue about, issues, things that are substantive that have to do with different philosophies about the world or about school or about life?
I can't really think of anything.
Okay.
That.
Yeah. Then let's move on. How is our world messed up, and how would you fix it?
This isn't necessarily a social problem, but more of a moral problem. A lot of people think, what can others do for you? But it doesn't always have to be, what can you do for them? It can be, what can you do for yourself first? I don't know, it's just the alternative thought. Or more deeply, what can you do for yourself so that you can do more for others?
I think that's very well thought. Write it down. That could be very valuable to think about. Is there some part of the world, some social experience, some area in which that problem rears its head most often to you?
Well, for many things like violin, you have to learn violin first, then you can help others. You can't help them if you're just a beginner. Same with skiing, and then some historical figures like Ben Franklin or Carnegie. They're both rags to riches. They brought themselves to riches first, then they helped others. Ben Franklin, in one of his essays, he talked about he walked into Philly with no money, gave one of his rolls of bread away, and yeah, he still turned out as a very good person, and he did no patents to help others.
Interesting. It's a unique point of view, and that's really valuable. Good. Do we have other answers for this? How is our world messed up, and how would you fix it? This is a question that often comes up in schools that particularly are oriented toward social justice issues. But not all answers to this question necessarily have to be like that, because I would feel just as comfortable for this question answering, how's our world messed up? We're not doing enough to guard against global warming, as I would be to say, how's our world messed up? There's a persistence of zombies in films that is preventing other horror tropes from gaining as much viewing as they should get. There is a problem in our world of a persistence of zombies. Do any of you have an answer for this that is specific to you? How is our world messed up, and what would you do to fix it? We very well might need more mummies. I haven't seen a mummy in a very long time, outside of like The Mummy. Any other answers for this question? How's our world messed up, and how would you fix it? Well, it's not like you can just make the Emoji Movie no longer exist. I suppose you can make better movies. Okay, then we may jump forward along. I think we're just going to do one or two more of these, and then I want to have a sort of separate conversation. Okay. Yes. What's the most important thing that happened to you by accident, and how did it change you?
If you mean accident, not not planned, then for me it would be joining band when I was in high school, because I didn't do like any music in middle school and before. Well, I did play piano when I was young, but stopped pretty quickly. So I didn't join like the band in middle school like all my other friends, but I did join in high school only because my brother joined in his senior year of high school, and he said, "Oh, it's fun," so he encouraged me to join, and then I just joined, and it wasn't like planned, so I guess you could say it was by accident, and it's good because now I like band, and yeah, a lot of great experiences and a lot of great lessons, and most of my life revolved around band now, I guess.
Cool. That's a really valuable entry point. There's a really interesting essay to be written about your experiences in band that start from that place as an outsider, saying, I joined band by accident. My brother told me I should because he joined as a senior, and I'm lucky I did because now my whole life revolves around it. It's a really powerful way of talking about your experience because it shows the change, and it also allows you to tell a story that's about evolution. That's often one of the big tricks in these pieces, finding a way for there to feel like there's some sort of arc in terms of change in your life. So that could be a valuable way to do it, starting from being in band, having never done it before. That's quite cool.
Okay, cool.
Any other answers that folks have? Things that happened to you by accident that changed you?
I don't know, but maybe meeting other people online. Nowadays, it's just internet. No one really talks that much face to face. Most of the conversation is through a messaging app or the sort. And so kind of like the essay example on the website, it's like some of the internet friends who you've never seen in real life are better friends than your in real life friends.
Is that something that's true for you too?
Yeah.
What is your group of friends that you have from the internet? Who are they?
From a class I took online. So they also share similar interests in that way.
A class online on what?
It was on AOPS.
What's that?
It's like, seems like other people know, it's like math classes focused on the math competitions such as AMC.
Okay. What kind of special math do you need to know for the math competitions? What are the things that they test in math competitions that you would never have to learn in school?
Well, for high school math AMC, you just need to know how to think and put together more pieces instead of just simple application of the formula. You need to be able to see a few steps ahead so that you can solve the problem.
So is it similar to being like an expert chess player, being able to get a few steps ahead?
And I'm not sure if they're really the same. You just need to do more problems, and then you'll see what, because each of these problems, they're made so that you can solve them, but then you need to see how to solve them.
Sure.
Tennis is kind of more on the go, I think.
Okay. Here's what I want you to think about. Because you've stumbled on something that I think is quite interesting and is an example of expert knowledge. If you wanted to introduce someone who'd never been a part of a math competition before to what it's like to be part of a math competition, what would they need to know? And don't feel like you have to answer this now. Just think about it and write down some notes so that if you end up writing an essay on this, you've got the thoughts fresh. What are the things that someone who'd never done a math competition before, what would they be surprised by? What wouldn't they know? What's it like to show up at one of these competitions? How is it different from what they would expect? And yeah, I think that generally covers it. The idea of introducing someone to a world that they haven't experienced before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. I want to share one more question, and then I'd love to open up some comments and questions and talk a little bit more. Okay. So this is my one that I also one that I like to do just so that I can continue to improve this lesson material. What question should I really be asking here? What's the college essay question that like you think is what you should be being asked in this process that you haven't seen them asking at all? Dunno? Are you sure? It seems like we're still connected. I may just not have been speaking because I was waiting on you all. Oh, what questions should I really be asking? What questions should the college application process really be asking? What's the kind of question you actually want to respond to? If there's nothing on that, that's okay, and we can move on. Is there not something that occurs to you seems to be missing from this process? Either mine or the college essay process at large, the college writing process at large? It may be too early for you to answer this. You know what, Kevin? I'll take the risk. What is the un-PC question? Okay, if it's really un-PC, then don't. I sort of want to reiterate that I want to make this a safe and supportive place of strange thoughts, of against the grain thought. I mean, I suppose if your questions are truly un-PC, then we shouldn't touch them here. But yeah, okay. Then I might actually just wrap this on up and say this. Please go through and look at the rest of these questions and try and answer them to the best of your ability on your own time. You'll probably find that if you go through that process and try and like fill it all on out, you'll be able to have a lot of material to come back to as you're working on supplementals. With that being said, here's what my expectations are in preparation for next week. I'm going to ask that all of you read a couple of materials before we meet next time. They are The Parlay, which is a thing that I wrote that's my sort of alternative rock process to college essay writing. We'll talk about that in class after you've read it. I also want you to read Essay, my essay on essays. The point of that piece is that I think that a lot of students at your point in the learning process really hate essay writing. And I think that school has done everything in order to make people feel that way, because all of the joy is kind of pulled out of it. And you'll read about it, so I won't go into too great a detail. But it used to be that essays were one of the most rebellious things that one could do. The whole point of an essay is to try and go against the grain, go against popular thought, to stand out and say, I know this is what the rest of the world thinks, but I want to change your mind. Here's a different perspective. And there's something really rebellious and courageous about that. The original essays, written by Montaigne and others, are about fighting what everyone else is saying. So I think there's something lost between the origins of the essay and the BS that we learn in middle school language arts, where we're told that we have to follow by some strict rule set that the teachers are passing down to us, when really there's only one rule as far as I'm concerned when it comes to essay writing. College essay is a little different, but when it comes to essay writing, there's only one rule, and it's try and change your reader's mind and do whatever's necessary in order to do so. With college essay writing, it's a little different because it's also about personal writing. It's about convincing them they should choose you. But ultimately, it ends up being a similar animal. It's, here's why I'm different. Here's why my perspective is different. Here's why your school really wants me there. You should, because I've got something to offer that other folks won't bring, that only I can. That may be a little bit scary, but I think if it is scary, at least it's not boring. At least it's not English class nonsense where you have to tell the teacher why Achilles was mad when the teacher already knows why Achilles is mad, and there's no way you're going to change their mind. This is about persuasion, and this is about having someone else come around to your way of thinking. And that's really cool. So that's that. We have about 15 minutes left today. We're running a little early because usually I teach this class to 6. So going over the brainstorming sheet takes a little bit more time. I want to leave these 15 minutes open to talk a little bit. Because for next week, again, you're going to read the parlay, the essay on essays. You'll read 2 college essays written by my past students. I'm going to try and open them up now so that you can see them. I seem to have pressed a wrong button and I'm doing horrible things. I will get back and then we will be working again. Please forgive me and my silly fingers. Here we are again. Yes, good. For next week, for next Tuesday, this is what I want to see. I would like you all to read Essay on Essays in the College Essay Parlay Code. I want you to read 2 of the past pieces by my older students, My Dinner with Tanya and What Makes a Great Draft Pick. If you've read these materials already, you don't have to read them again. But if you haven't, it's homework for next week. I would love if you all would fill out the essay brainstorming sheet, finish what we were just working on, and fill out the school list. The school list is just for us individually. We're not sharing it with the whole class. It's just an opportunity for me to get a sense of what are the places that you all are applying to. That way, if there are any schools that overlap, we can look at them together, and that could be helpful. The other thing is, it's your opportunity to start making that list of, this is specifically what I want from this school. That way, when you get to the supplementals and start thinking about, how do I prove I'm serious about this place? It'll be like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what they've got. Here are the connections that connect the 2 together. And finally, I would like you all to start an It Exists draft of the Common App. I call it that because that is how high the bar is for that draft. All it must do is exist. I'd love to see a couple hundred words. Call it 300 for brainstorming. If you hit 600, hit 800, that's phenomenal. But write a few hundred words about some topic that interests you, ideally based on what we've talked about today. But, if you have something else that you'd rather write on, that's good too. We have 15 minutes now. That's what I expect for next week. I am now open for comments and questions. If you have any questions, or if you're worried what you might write about, now's a great time to brainstorm. Y'all feel confident heading into next week?
Yeah.
So you were talking about how evolution is something like the evolution, a good topic on the essay, right? I think you mentioned that.
I did.
Right. So I already had an idea for any essay. It would sort of fit anything about challenge or growth, or it could be the Common App essay that you could write about anything. Where my idea was kind of centered on both. Where sort of in middle school I was kind of introverted, and I didn't have many friends, and I was social, and when people try to make friends with me, I wouldn't do it. And then okay, stop.
Yeah, what a power move.
Basically in high school, as I mentioned, kind of by accident, I joined band and marching band because my brother the year, and marching band kind of threw me out of the bubble because right out of the day I'm I made friends because in my saxophone section they were seniors, and there were also freshmen who were same boat where they're like, yeah, trying something new, and like, so basically like I made my first friends in like marching band, and then sooner or later, being around people in like a consistent time, made me like more social, I guess, and that would be like dope, and my band kind of initiated it, and then and like also part of this idea, I want to say like how initially like because I was raised in like kind of like a conservative family, so before high school, like I would want to associate with like other races or like queer people, but being thrown into like marching band, well, it's actually pretty diverse. Everyone's connected through music, but like everyone's backgrounds and ethnicities and even sexualities, they're all like pretty diverse and like a big mix, surprisingly. So getting to like know all of those different people, kind of like made me realize the importance of diversity, and kind of made me gain confidence, so like I could talk to people and talk to adults and stuff like that. So my mom and I kind of disagreed on this topic because she said her reasoning was that I'm putting myself in a negative light, saying I'm anti-social and stuff. But my reasoning was it's like the contrast that really matters, and it shouldn't really be about like positive attributes all throughout the entire thing, but it's more like, as you said, like the arc that's like important. So I just wanted like your opinion on that.
Without getting in the middle of a fight between you and your mom, I agree with you. I think that there are ways in which your mom is right, in which you don't want to linger too long on negative attributes. But one of the most powerful things in storytelling is to show change, to show evolution. So at the beginning of the essay, it's okay to say some things to that effect. That I was an introverted kid, and people would try to be my friend, and I would necessarily reciprocate. And then I got into band in high school, and that all changed. The thing about this shows up in the parlay, and maybe it'll give you something more literal to cling on to, but I think that Superman is boring. Right?
Yeah. I read that like Superman is boring while Batman is interesting.
Superman is boring because he doesn't have any fatal flaws. His fatal flaw is a freaking like rock. It's kryptonite. It's stupid. It's stupid because it means that like he isn't a person. We can't connect to that. And all of the superheroes that I'm interested in watching, they have these qualities of human foibles. They're like the characters that appear in the Marvel universe that we're drawn to, but like also Iron Man is freaking conceited. He's got problems. Hulk has his anger issues. And it's much more interesting to watch people contend with and overcome challenges than to watch them just succeed. Or like just succeed except for when there's kryptonite. Like, do that. So that is a sort of meandering, wandering answer to your question. I think that you should start writing a draft on that. That's a really excellent topic. It sounds like there's a lot of material there. There's a lot of thoughts that you have relating to being in band. And it sounds like there's a real natural arc to that story. And I would love to hear it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the other people here, like what do you guys think about the the topic, like the idea.
Pardon?
Like, I want to ask the other people's opinion.
Yeah. What do other people think about writing about band?
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea because it's definitely something that's really important to your life.
I think it has a really big impact on you because you're just talking about what you change because of band. So I think if you talk about something that's such a central focus, I guess, of your life or experience growing up, I think it's a good topic to write about.
Yeah, as he said in his guide, as long as it is interesting, you can be specific about it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And I want to linger on that last thing Kevin just said. So long as it's personal, so long as it's specific. Kevin, you just asked 2 questions.
Yeah, so one of them was about the how's our road messed up and what would you do to fix it? If we wrote about some big social issue that liberal versus conservative has a different view, what would you do in that case?
Okay, I want to deal with the easier question first, and then we'll deal with the more complicated one. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay. Writing about something to not be like a stereotypical Asian, i.e. music and academic. It is wise to write about something that's very specific and unique. That's why if you're writing about something musical or academic, I always encourage people to try and find the parts of it that are very specific. I mean, to this day, people continue to make, I'm going to talk about this in terms of movies because it's a little bit easier. There continue to be rom-coms made every year. There continue to be coming of age movies, continue to be action-packed movies with like Tom Cruise jumping onto the helicopter just in time, right? There continues to be an appetite to hear about a given thing. So I wouldn't be worried necessarily about writing something people often write about. What I would concern oneself with is making sure that if you are writing about something common, like, for example, talking about band, finding a way of talking about it that's specifically yours. And then you're totally fine. And Kevin, if you want to write something that's unusual or not about like the stereotypical Asian things as you see them, that could also be a good move because it's more likely to be something they haven't seen before. It's just about finding the thing that puts you in the best possible light, which brings me to the second part. I don't know. With respect to talking about social issues, talking about gun policy, it's a dangerous thing. And I think you are wise to recognize, or I think it's what you're implying, that among admissions officers, there's a likely liberal bias. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the basis of the question.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that you put yourself in an interesting position in that you have the opportunity to express an opinion that you could maybe change the opinion of your reader about. Though, if you know that your reader might read a certain thing and it would turn them off and make them like you less, you wouldn't want to write about that thing. And it would not be legal, it would not be fair to be criticized on the basis of one's political beliefs when it comes to college admissions. But that's not to say it wouldn't happen. What I would think about for this, because I think that your you're thinking that there's likely a liberal bias among your readership. That's wise. Is there a way of talking about, like, say, gun policy or a perhaps more conservative stance on a particular social issue that you think that you can maybe change their mind about? Because if you're able to do that, you've done something really remarkable. But the thing I'll say about it, without getting into my politics or yours, is there are safer topics to write about, and there are more dangerous topics to write about. And the more dangerous topics have a potential to really engage the reader right away. But if it engages them in the wrong way, you're in trouble. If it engages them in a good way, and they're like, here's someone who had the guts to write about their beliefs and is really articulate in explaining why, they may be more likely to choose them. Because what I will say, again, without getting into much of any of my own politics, colleges look for diversity, and colleges look for diversity of thought. And there's yeah?
What would be an example of a issue? If has like a college asked that question before, a role problem, or
a problem in the world? Oh yeah, it's a pretty common essay topic to see from more social justice oriented schools. Actually, and I also think that Stanford sometimes does a question that's to that effect. It's like, what is the biggest problem plaguing our world in the next 50 years?
so what kind of topic would be better to write about?
I'm not sure. I mean,
I think they're like safer topics, such
often,
as like things that always happen in the world, like hunger and all that stuff. But I'm not sure if that's too like generic to talk about as compared to more controversial things.
exactly. And that's the thing to weigh. And that's why I'm trying not to make any generalization. It's the sort of thing that I would personally treat on a case-by-case basis. Regardless of what my other political beliefs happen to be, I happen to be pretty far on the left when it comes to gun policy. So Kevin, were you trying to convince me about gun policy? I would be pretty tough to convince, but if you made a really good argument, I would be interested to hear it.
Cool.
And
then
I probably also
if you-
wouldn't write it as a Common App.
Yeah. So for these questions, would you have to write as if you're trying to persuade the reader of a certain perspective, or what kind of stuff should you talk about in that essay?
We might come back around to this a little bit later. I believe that almost all essay is persuasive in one respect or another. So you are, even if it's a personal essay, you are sort of implicitly doing a persuasive job as well. You're trying to say, choose me and not that dude.
Yep.
So yeah, it may not be persuasive in that you need to get the person to go from we need to pull the guns out of every house to we don't need any gun regulation at all. But there are smaller arguments that you could probably make that could maybe be persuasive about the ways in which liberal America has a limited understanding of what stricter gun control would do, which I think is true. Anyway, it is now 6:33, and or whichever time zone it is for you. I think it's time to call it a day. I want to thank you all for such an effective class. I'm so excited to see the things that you read. To read the things that you write. I think it's time to call it a day here. We're going to be spending the whole summer together. Feel free to send me emails if you have any more questions throughout the rest of the week. But I'm going to call it there. Go back to the syllabus to check what you need to do for next week and start trying to write something. Doesn't have to be good right away. It just has to be something. I'll stick around here for a couple of minutes if you have any lingering questions. But beyond that, thank you all so much and have a great week.
Yeah, thanks, you too.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
All right. So can we go now?
Oh yeah, class dismissed.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next week.
Okay, I still like, so like kind of going off, but like you have time to like stay for another question.
Yeah, let's chat. What's up?
Okay, so like about like the politics question, I kind of like, my question was kind of like on that too, where like my idea was like, oh, I come from like a conservative place, but joining marching band like made me realize like the importance of diversity and stuff like that. My mom said, let's say the admissions officer is, let's say like they're liberal and they read that I come from a conservative family, then she says that they would be turned off and they would, be less likely to admit me. But my opinion was that if I, explained how I opened up, then maybe that would like be more important than where I came from.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I think that discussing politics in these essays is complicated and difficult to get right, and that's why we have the whole summer to work on it. I will keep my eyes on that, but colleges are looking for diversity of thought, and
Right.
a liberal reader is not going to judge you for where you come from. A liberal reader isn't going to, a conservative reader is not going to judge you for where you come from. They want to see who you are and how you can provide a valuable perspective to the school. I wouldn't worry about that just yet.
Okay, so you definitely think that is an idea worth starting the draft on and worth pursuing.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I just needed that evidence.
Yeah.
To settle the debate.
It's a thing worth continuing to talk about. It sounds like it may come up in this class a couple of times, which when it does, let's talk about it because it's a complicated thing to figure out.
Okay.